I want to talk about targeting men in ending intimate partner violence in DRC. And I had planned to do it together with Benoit Roura-Toitoye, but he didn't manage to make it, so I will give him the floor via a video. So, Benoit is one of the people of Living Peace who designed an intervention for men, mainly for men who have wives who were raped in the war, or men who were abusing their wives. And that started all with the International Men and Gender Equality Survey in the eastern of Congo, where it became clear that men who were exposed themselves to trauma were more likely to be violent to their wives than men who were not, and especially men whose wives were raped. This was an extra stress factor for them to become more violent, and also that men cope with this stress and trauma on a quite violent way. They try to address the expectations of their manhood and to be very dominant and the head of the family, and do this by becoming violent or drinking too much. So I'll give, I hope it works, first the floor to Benoit, who tells a bit about the intervention.
Dans une société où il y a beaucoup de violence, on a tendance aussi à perpétrer la violence.
This is my 15 minutes. Hè? Nee, deze staat in Engels ondertitelen. Als je het kan zien. Oké. So now, j'appuie sur accès.
Dans une société où il y a beaucoup de violence, on a tendance aussi à perpétrer la violence. Depuis 1997 jusqu'à aujourd'hui, il y a eu plus de 6 millions de morts. Nous avons des comportements anormaux, antisociaux, parce qu'il y a eu beaucoup de guerres. Avant, il y avait vraiment beaucoup d'efforts pour aider la victime. Et c'est bien, il faut continuer, c'est bien. Mais vraiment, pour stopper la violence, il faut s'attaquer à la source. Et la source, c'est l'homme. Comment ça se passe pour le changement? Qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour que ces gens puissent changer dans les groupes?
Nous reconnaissons que les hommes avec lesquels nous travaillons, ce sont des personnes qui souffrent psychologiquement. Après avoir guéri ces traumatismes, c'est à ce moment-là que nous procédons au changement.
Living Peace, comme on dit chez nous ici en français, vivons la paix. C'est une approche qui est venue aider l'individu qui est violent, l'homme violent. Notre approche, c'est l'approche base communautaire. Nous formons les facilitateurs pour aider à faciliter ces groupes. Travailler en groupe thérapie, c'est bien, premièrement dans un pays où il n'y a pas de psychologue, il n'y a pas de cancellage, il n'y a pas de psychiatre. Et on peut aussi, la société peut se soigner elle-même, la population. Quand il n'y a pas de professionnels en santé mentale, la population peut se prendre en charge. C'est comme
Sorry, the title is still on. We're fighting the culture, but the culture is powerful. This is the end of it. How can I go back to the... So the people he was training are the facilitators of the intervention. So the Living Peace is a group intervention for 15 weeks. Men come together, sharing their experiences and all the traumas and the personal problems they have, also addressing how they cope with the stress, what they think is normal, how to behave to their wives and the children. And they try to get husbands of female war-related rape survivors and husbands who are beating their wives up in the group, but they also invite, well, as they call, men of integrity, because you can't have only a group with men who are violent, because it will be very stigmatizing. So I can't go into how they select, but they have a special way to do this. So they cope on trauma and reconstructing identities on a non-violent and more gender transformative way. They try to reduce the stigma and exclusion of the women who experience conflict-related rape, and they think that if you build a social cohesion, that it will reduce the intimate partner violence. And they did a pre and post test, and it was really almost unbelievable. 90% of the men and their wives, because the wives were asked to fill in the form as well, that the violence was reduced. And I could hardly believe it. You know, if I don't know how it is for you, but if I go for a training, for instance, for yoga, I promise myself I do it the rest of my life, but after 3 weeks, I'm too busy if something else happens. And so I thought this might happen with this man as well. I've forgotten to introduce myself. I'm a medical anthropologist and working in the field of trauma and gender-based violence, and I was asked to do an impact evaluation after 3 years. Those men hadn't had any contact with the facilitators of Living Peace Institute at all. So they were 3 years left alone, and we had 3 research questions. Do former participants show behavior and attitude changes towards IPV and gender relations? Are those changes visible in interpersonal relations with their partners and with relatives? And have the interpersonal changes had an impact on community level? So we tried to do a time series qualitative research in 3 rounds, but we didn't manage that. We did 2. We had interviewed 155 respondents in North and South Kivu, focus group with individual interviews with 40 participants of the group, with their wives, 40 wives, with some children, with some extended family, and with some people in a community. So we tried to get a few of different people who were related to the man. And everything was transcribed. I will not go into this now, but more on the findings. So after 3 years, still in 30 of the 40 families, the violence had stopped. The physical violence, but also the psychological violence, set by the men themselves, the wives and other people. Of the 10 left, 9 men were violent if they had relapse of drinking alcohol. And one person, but there was some improvement, and one person remained very violent, but it turned out later that he was really addicted and also might have a mental disorder. The conflict management skills and the non-violent coping mechanisms really were improved. They managed to have other ways to deal with distress. If you look at the gender equality or the idea of gender equality, well, gender equality doesn't exist, and I don't think this is something which you can gain in such a short notice, but they are still head of the household, but they include their wives in decision-taking and financial decision. So there is far more communication between them. Also the relationship with wives and children has changed. Men feel more responsible, communicate better, ask their wives if it is okay if they have sex, which is really very important for the wives who are raped, we can all imagine. Also the wives said that because of this, their sexual joy also improved, which was very important for them. There were 37 men we interviewed who had a wife who was raped in the war. They all accepted the wife, and the wife said themselves as well. And the 12 children born out of this rape were also accepted by the men, while they were all sent away before. So the men accepted that the children came back home, sometimes with the wife, and he dealt with them as if they were their own children. And the economic challenges improved, were less, so the economic situation improved. Spouses said some said we are in heaven. We came from hell and we are in heaven, which is, well, quite high, but they were happy. Less stressed, feel to be loved. The children said that the father takes more responsibilities, played with them. All girls went to school, while before the intervention, almost none of the girls went to school, only the boys. Extended families get more respect for the men. The community saw changes. Some women went to the wives and said, "What kind of medicine did you give to your husband? Can you give me a bit of it as well?" The men often went to other men to talk if they knew that that man was also beating up his wife. And some even had theater plays to make community people aware of that the ideas of gender and violence should have been changed without any help from others. But I want to show a short video of Abi and Kialu. Abi is the man who was in the group. He was very violent to his wife. His wife was raped by militia and has given birth to a child. The child in the video is not the child who was born out of rape. No, it's not this one, yeah. There go my 5 minutes.
Saona kia kushanje kia kwanza alirudia kambele, alikuwa anaanza rudia mbele kunyumba.
Kuishi kwangu hii maisha ya mtu kwangu ilikuwa difficile juu ya nini? Ya pili maentourage batu wote bakanza nitupia maneno, niambia ushabeba kabati, umebeba instigo, donc bakaniona ke niko mina perdre valeur mu communauté. Kufika mlo mpromundo, kitu kikubwa kilinigusaka, kuko papa umwa alinielezea habari ya kwamba naye baliviolaka mtoto bibi yake. Ile probleme nesa alinielezea nikaiona inalingana na yangu. Nikajisikia sasa ni wakati mimi nijiruhusie juu nione nishughulikie watoto.
Anaanza kuambia wakati na masemi anashanje.
Nikaanza sasa kitu kikubwa nilianza nacho, maneno yenye nilikuwa naenda kuzungumza kule nje, nikaanza ishange na bibi kumuni. Ile dialogue tunjo ilikuwa ka devoir kubwa balinipaka, ongea naye. Nikajisikia sasa tena nakamata fasi ndani ya maisha yangu.
Nilianzaka jo kipendo la mtoto matuka violence. Nilianzaka ona samua basi. Ni ndoto. Futuro ni kuacha, baki hisi anaacha, basi mimi najisikia kwa sana. Enjoy.
Okay. Okay, so far. So to conclude, I think this method is really something which is helpful for some men, and the most important thing is how come that it lasts. That was the question, that it not goes away. And I think it is because the men are very much rewarded for the other behavior. Some said, I was a lion in the house, and now I'm fighting as a lion for my house. So they feel be respected by the children are nice, they are eating together, they feel respected by their wives, they have good sex, which they feel as important. So this helped them very much to continue in changing their lives. And sometimes if they have a relapse in alcohol, then the women are more empowered and are more able to put a stop on the behavior of the men. So far, if you want to see more, then I have some references. And in the websites you can find more information about the intervention. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je propose de passer maintenant la parole à Madame Cohen. Please.
Can we have the notes too? Like this? Yes, please. That's good. Your paper is there. Oh, thank you. No, this one, but you can use it. I don't know. Okay. And oh, good. Okay. You will just have to push there. You just have to push there. Here, to the head. Okay. Good afternoon. We're going to do a bit of a tag team, as Rhoda and I work together on this project, and we are going to present, I will present some of it in English, Rhoda will present some in French. We're going to challenge our fabulous interpreters to keep up with the switching back and forth. We'd like to share with you today an innovative intervention that we've developed called Common Threads Project. In Panzi, in the DRC, we call it Kamba Moja. In other countries, it has other names as well. And it is a comprehensive trauma treatment program. When we have survivors recovering from what Dr. Mukwege has given us a new term for, REV, rape with extreme violence, other forms of extreme brutality, we need some creative solutions. We need all that we can muster to help these women find the path forward. And it's not a quick fix. It's a highly skilled, long-term intervention that we hope to share with you today. Okay. And our conviction is that survivors deserve no less than a transformative trauma treatment. And this intervention draws both on ancient cultural practice, which I'm about to share with you, as well as on current neurobiological understandings of trauma, and we're trying to find a blend of those two. Okay. Oops. Okay. I want to just share with you at the outset some key principles that underlie and inform the work that we do. And the first is to do with the importance of collective treatment for collective trauma. a very important psychologist said way back in 1992, Judith Herman, she said, the solidarity of a group provides the strongest protection against terror and despair and the strongest antidote to traumatic experience. And she was talking about sexual violence against women at that time. So the second I've already mentioned, which is that all survivors, not just survivors of privilege, deserve an opportunity for transformative recovery, for deep, enduring, true trauma treatment, and not a Band-Aid solution, not a quick solution. And the third is that reducing mental health symptoms is the beginning of a process. It is not just the end of a process, I believe. And that's something that we'll tell you more about, but that we have to view this process in the broader context. And that's why we talk about moving from victims to survivors to agents of change. We're looking at a broader process than the medical model would suggest, which is just symptom reduction. That's important, and it's a first step, and we have to do that, or nothing else is possible. But that's not the end of the story. Okay. The other thing that I just want to spend a moment on, but we had some time earlier in the day's presentations to look at the neurobiology of trauma, but the important thing that I want to say here is, my English is missing, but that's okay. Is it here? Oh, I didn't know I did that. Amazing. Okay, that's magical. Okay. So the point is that we are designed for survival. Our brains and our bodies are designed for survival, and a lot of things happen automatically at the moment of trauma that have consequences for how we ought to approach trauma treatment. And the only point that I'm going to make, because we could spend the whole day on neurobiology, but we won't do so, is that the cerebral cortex, this is your brain right here. You can make one for yourself if you like. The cerebral cortex here on the top, where language is processed, and judgment and analytical thinking. That's here. Inside here you have the limbic system and the brainstem. And one shorthand for saying this is that trauma lives in the body, in the brainstem, the autonomic nervous system here, and in the limbic system that is deep inside the brain. And in order to work on recovery, in order to work on healing, in some way, we need to address all of those systems. Okay. The other piece of inspiration comes from this ancient tradition whereby women meet together in groups, and they have in many, many cultures throughout history, not as a therapy per se, but has tremendous therapeutic effect. This cultural phenomenon of making story cloths. That is, women come together to support each other, to tell their stories, and especially to describe what they cannot speak. Yeah? They describe in images. And remember the brain that I showed you here, yeah? What activates during trauma is the visual cortex and the sensory motor parts of the brain, so that when we try to engage and access trauma, we have to engage through images and through the body, okay? And this practice of making story cloths here in Chile, this was during the time of Pinochet. I'm not going to go into, I'm just going to show you a few examples of story cloths that have been made from very diverse places in the world. We borrow this practice and integrate it into an integrated trauma treatment program. Here, 3,000 story cloths have been made by women who survived apartheid to describe their experiences in apartheid that they might not have words for. And we not only don't have words for these things because of the stigma and the taboo to speak about these matters, but also because of the way we are wired neurobiologically. Yeah? Okay. So what is therapeutic about this story cloth making? As you can see, we've identified many aspects of this process which we think are responsible for why these groups persist in so many different cultures and why women form them again and again. And it has to do with many of the things that we're discovering are helpful in trauma treatment. That is the finding, as we heard in the previous talk, just that simple finding that I'm not alone, that others have experienced this too, is critical. So the connection that you have while you're sewing, you don't have to look at the other person in the face to face. Even Freud understood that. You can be free to speak more freely. So when you're sewing and talking, it allows you to move back and forth with emotional safety from that singular introspection to sharing with another or with the group. And of course, it allows people to express themselves in the ways that we know they may need to do but have trouble doing. It's also this meditative rhythmic activity which is deeply self-regulating in and of itself and can support the highly dysregulating process of revisiting traumatic experience. And of course, we know that if we don't do that well, we can make matters much worse for survivors. If that revisiting the traumatic experience is done poorly, it can be very destabilizing. But somehow, the sewing itself and a number of other activities that we do, but the sewing does seem to help that stabilization remain. And it's something that ancient wisdom, which we ought to pay more attention to in our work, I think, has to teach us. Okay, and it's very slow, like trauma treatment. It is not, like painting pictures is another form of art therapy, but the sewing of these textiles is this gradual process. Okay, and finally, it allows people to make something quite extraordinary out of a horrific experience. So this common threads intervention that we developed is an integrative approach that works from the bottom up, the body, the emotions, the mind, social relationships, of course, and even the spirit, which we in Western psychology often leave out of the story. But people who survive atrocity need to re-find purpose in their lives. This we know. It is not a treatment for people in crisis. It's a second-order treatment for the long term. People have to stabilize first before they can be ready for this. It is a 6-month intervention, after which, wow, already. Okay, after which, I'm going to just skip over this because otherwise we'll not have time for the rest. Okay, I think you're going to talk about this, no? Go ahead.
Okay. Bon après-midi à tous. Moi, c'est Rhoda. Je travaille comme superviseur clinique du projet Kambamoja. Et je veux présenter brièvement le travail que nous faisons durant ce traitement. Alors, nous avons ici la psychoéducation que nous faisons selon le choix d'un thème bien précis, choisi quelquefois par le bénéficiaire ou soit par le facilitateur du groupe. Et nous discutons autour de ce sujet pour savoir quelle est la pensée, quelle est la conception de bénéficiaires sur le traumatisme. Nous avons aussi des travaux somatiques que nous faisons au travers des exercices de respiration profonde. Nous avons aussi des exercices de méditation, de relaxation musculaire et j'en passe. Et nous avons aussi nous pratiquons des activités artistiques dont nous avons le dessin, nous avons aussi la confection de poupées qui nous permet essayer de travailler sur l'estime de soi ou bien de dégager les émotions incluses qu'on ne peut pas exprimer. Nous avons aussi le coping skills, attends, je vais mettre ça en français. Nous avons les habiletés d'adaptation. Au fait, nous essayons de prendre toutes ces pratiques et les adapter à des contextes culturels que les femmes elles-mêmes peuvent suggérer. Et nous avons à la fin, avant la fin, la confection des tissus où nous travaillons sur l'inexprimable. C'est ici que la femme se décharge sur son tissu d'histoire et elle essaye d'exprimer ce qui est inexprimable par le mot. Nous avons par la suite des traitements de la mémoire traumatique quand le flashback peuvent revenir et d'autres réactions peuvent survenir. Nous avons quelques exercices que nous essayons de pratiquer avec les femmes pour essayer un peu de stabiliser cette mémoire traumatique qui revient. Et enfin, il y a la cohésion du groupe pour créer la sécurité. Nous savons bien que l'Africain est un être social. Alors la communauté importe beaucoup pour la société africaine. Alors ces patientes aussi, elles bénéficient de cette cohésion du groupe et ceci apporte un sentiment de sécurité, bien sûr après avoir garanti par la confidentialité. Je passe. Ici, nous avons le modèle de...
Maybe we should pass this too.
Ok.
What do you think?
Ok, ça va.
Sorry.
Excusez, nous passons.
Go ahead.
Alors, nous voulons savoir qui sont les bénéficiaires de Kamba-Moja. Cette thérapie a été appliquée sur 90 patientes, jusque-là en RDC. Et parmi ces 90, nous avons 15 mineurs qui ont été, sur qui la thérapie a été appliquée pour une toute première fois. Et parmi ces 15 mineurs, le 3/4 de mineurs ont des enfants issus du viol. Nous travaillons avec des patients de différents endroits du Congo, de Bukavu. Il y a Kavumu, nous avons eu aussi à Luinja, à Kamituga et à Bukavu à la maison d'Orcas. Alors ces femmes ne sont pas seulement victimes de violences sexuelles. Non, il y a aussi des femmes qui sont victimes de violences domestiques. Nous avons des enfants rejetés. Nous avons aussi tant d'autres violences que nous pouvons trouver et qui font face au traumatisme. Je passe. Nous allons voir ici, ceci est un tissu qui a été confectionné par une de nos bénéficiaires qui était obligée d'épouser son violeur. Et tel que vous le voyez là, elle semble être invisible. Et alors, elle s'exprime sur ce tissu en disant qu'elle a été abusée, elle est tombée enceinte et son père l'a obligée d'épouser son violeur dont elle ne voulait pas épouser. Et c'est ainsi qu'elle a mené une vie malheureuse. Mais nous avons travaillé avec elle et à la fin, elle a pu développer une forte estime de soi qui l'a aidée à faire face à sa vie durant tout le temps qu'elle vivra avec cet homme. Nous verrons encore une fois, je vais présenter un dernier, il y a plus de minutes qui restent.
Ah ouais. Ouais.
L'image ne sort pas. Voilà.
Keep going. I don't know.
Voilà. Okay, fine. Nous avons ici une personne qui a choisi un sujet, une de nos bénéficiaires. Ceci est ce que j'ai besoin que vous sachiez. Cette femme, ses enfants ont été tués à la rivière, comme vous le voyez, et pendant qu'elle cherchait du secours, elle s'est réfugiée dans sa maison. Malheureusement, elle trouve juste en dessous son mari saoul et qui ne pouvait pas l'aider. Et alors, elle s'est mise à pleurer toute seule et à développer un problème de deuil traumatique. Et à la fin, nous avons travaillé avec cette femme. Elle a pu recouvrir son état de santé mentale, devenir stable, je peux le dire. Okay. Alors, c'est quoi l'objectif de toutes ces pratiques que nous sommes en train de faire avec ces bénéficiaires? Nous les amenons tous à vivre l'histoire d'une nouvelle manière. Parce qu'il arrive qu'on vive l'histoire d'une manière traumatique. Nous les amenons donc, ces survivantes, à comprendre leur histoire d'une nouvelle manière, à changer leur façon de comprendre leur vie. Et nous avons pu travailler avec toutes ces femmes et dans la plupart des cas, cette pratique a réussi. Eh bien, je crois en cette thérapie, en son efficacité et aussi, je crois que les femmes recouvrent vraiment une nouvelle façon de voir des choses avec la thérapie Kamba Moja. Je vous remercie.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to present our research, but we do have significant reductions in mental health symptoms in several of the countries where we have worked and where we've been able to study this, and we hope for future research. And yeah, another time we'll tell you the rest of the story. What I do want to emphasize is that beyond the reduction of symptoms, in the qualitative data, what we have found is a whole host of transformative treatment. Okay, thank you.
Merci pour cette très belle présentation et votre enthousiasme pour partager cela. Je vous propose maintenant que nous entendions M. Wainans pour sa présentation. Mais c'est celle-ci du coup. Oui, c'est ça. La première.
Voilà, bon après-midi. Donc, je m'appelle Eric, je travaille pour Médecins du Monde Belgique à l'hôpital de Panzi, au niveau de la coordination du service qui prend en charge les survivantes de violences sexuelles au niveau médical et psychologique, donc le premier et le deuxième pilier, service qui accueille aussi des patientes avec fistule et avec prolapsus. Le partenariat entre Médecins du Monde Belgique et l'hôpital de Panzi date de 2015, donc ça fait maintenant 4 ans. Et pour le dire un peu brièvement, nous sommes un peu le répondant de la DG ECHO de l'Union européenne, donc la Direction générale de l'aide humanitaire et de la protection civile, qui est un des principaux bailleurs du service SVS, un des principaux soutiens financiers. Et d'ailleurs, on les remercie au passage, parce que ça fait depuis la création du service en 2004 que ECHO est présent aux côtés du docteur Mukwege. Dans le cadre de cette étude, nous avons décidé de nous intéresser à un acteur du dispositif de soins qui est peu connu, qui est même assez peu reconnu, et qui est pourtant un acteur clé. C'est en tout cas notre hypothèse, notre intuition. Donc je parle des assistantes psychosociales qu'on désigne là-bas couramment par l'expression « maman chérie » ou « chérie maman ». Alors je ne sais pas comment traduire ça en anglais, mais en tout cas il ne faut pas traduire « maman cerise ». Darling mom. Ok. Donc les mamans chéries sont au nombre de 9 et elles ont toutes à la base une formation d'infirmière. L'intervention d'assistante psychosociale dans l'hôpital est sans doute une des principales originalités du modèle holistique de Panzi. Et leur intervention évolue dans le temps. Le modèle holistique n'est pas figé. Je pense que le docteur Mukwege hier a eu l'occasion de rappeler un peu la manière dont ça s'est construit progressivement. Le rôle des mamans chéries non plus n'est pas figé et il est évolutif. Mais nous avons fait quelques recherches et nous n'avons pas trouvé d'études qui s'est penchée sur la question. Je cite une référence en bas de page, donc un article auquel le docteur Mukwege a contribué, mais qui n'était pas centré spécifiquement sur le travail des mamans chéries. Donc ça nous semblait utile d'essayer de faire un peu avancer la question. Alors, pour savoir ce que font les mamans chéries, le mieux est de donner la parole à l'une d'entre elles, et donc on va appeler par vidéo interposée maman Esther, que les collègues de Panzi qui sont présents dans la salle connaissent bien. Voilà. Donc, place à Maman Esther.
Il faut donner toujours la force et l'espoir à la patiente que, en tout cas, ce qu'elle était vécue, ce n'était pas de sa propre volonté, mais c'est arrivé. C'est arrivé. Et le travail que j'ai fait là-bas, ça me donne de la fierté parce que malgré leur souffrance, malgré ce qu'ils avaient vécu, en tout cas quand elles reprennent une nouvelle force, elles se réintègrent et elles sont réinsérées dans leur propre famille et la communauté. C'est ça qui me donne la force de continuer mon travail.
Voilà, pour ceux qui la connaissent, Maman Esther est vraiment une personne assez remarquable. C'est une femme qui a vraiment une énergie assez extraordinaire. Ouais.
Ici? Non, attendez, je vais le faire s'il vous plaît bien.
Voilà, Maman Esther, je disais, vraiment une boule d'énergie et quelqu'un qui déborde aussi d'amour. Alors, dans un congrès scientifique, je vais plutôt parler de sa compassion, de son sentiment d'empathie qui est vraiment très très fort, mais une compassion pas larmoyante, je dirais, une compassion sur laquelle vraiment on peut se relever, se redresser, quoi. Maman Esther parlait de la force que lui donnent les patientes. Ben, la force, elle en a bien besoin parce que la charge de travail des assistantes psychosociales est quand même assez importante. Vous avez vu sur les 12 derniers mois, sur l'année dernière, le service a accueilli pas moins de 1500 patientes SVS. Et là, je ne compte même pas les cas de fistule et de prolapsus. Et donc, pour accompagner individuellement ces 1500 patientes, on comptait donc sur 9 mamans chéries. Maintenant, nous avons repris ici une synthèse du profil de poste des mamans chéries, en tout cas la dernière version du descriptif de poste, où l'on voit que la principale responsabilité relève de l'accompagnement individuel, mais que la maman chérie est amenée à accomplir différentes tâches. Donc elle a un profil, je dirais, assez généraliste ou assez polyvalent. Et donc la responsabilité est déclinée en toute une série de tâches qui relèvent, bon, les tâches administratives, évidemment, il y en a, et qui leur prennent d'ailleurs pas mal de temps. Tout ce qui relève de la prise en charge, donc les soins et la relation. Un rôle important aussi, un rôle de coordination et de liaison. Les mamans chéries créent du lien avec les patientes, mais elles mettent aussi du lien entre les intervenants. Elles fluidifient, je dirais, elles décloisonnent un peu les interventions. Elles ont un rôle de protection, un rôle de resocialisation sur lequel on est d'ailleurs occupé de travailler pour approfondir cette dimension de réinsertion. Alors si on en vient à l'étude proprement dite, donc c'est une étude assez simple dans sa méthodologie, on n'a pas procédé à des tests statistiques, c'est une étude exploratoire en vue de générer des hypothèses. Une étude en miroir des mamans chéries avec un échantillon de 40 patientes SVS qui étaient proches de leur sortie. Donc le fil rouge de ces entretiens, parce que donc on a mené des entretiens semi-structurés, donc le fil rouge était un questionnaire qui a été donc élaboré à partir du descriptif de poste, à partir du profil de poste, et questionnaire qui a été administré par une enquêtrice indépendante qui est en fait une membre du mouvement des survivantes de viols et violences sexuelles en RDC. Donc les entretiens ont eu lieu en swahili avec les SVS, en français avec les mamans chéries, et nous avons soumis un peu le protocole de recherche à l'approbation du comité d'éthique du Sud Kivu. Dans un premier temps, donc l'enquêtrice a demandé aux mamans chéries de citer les tâches qu'elles sont amenées à accomplir quotidiennement dans l'ordre qui leur venait dans la tête, et elle a pris note de l'ordre de citation. Dans le tableau, vous voyez ici les fréquences des réponses. L'enquêtrice a également laisser la liberté aux mamans chéries et plus tard aux SVS d'ajouter des tâches auxquelles on n'aurait pas pensé au préalable. Donc on a laissé vraiment, ce n'était pas des entretiens fermés. Il est intéressant de noter que tant chez les mamans chéries que chez les SVS, donc les tâches qui ont été ajoutées spontanément sont des tâches qui relèvent du soin, de la relation du soin. Donc ce n'est pas anodin. On ne va pas présenter ici toutes les réponses qui ont été données, ce serait un peu fastidieux, quoi. On les annexera de toute manière à la présentation écrite. On note simplement ici que, voilà, qu'on a dû reformuler certaines questions pour les SVS, qu'on a dû supprimer aussi toute une série de questions, donc de tâches auxquelles on n'a pas confronté les SVS parce que tout simplement elles n'ont pas conscience de ces aspects du travail de leur maman chérie, quoi. Et donc les entretiens n'étaient pas tout à fait symétriques ou en miroir, vu qu'on n'a pas appliqué des deux côtés là, exactement le même questionnaire, quoi. Au niveau de la vision, de la perception que les patientes SVS ont des mamans chéries, donc il ressort clairement qu'elles les voient avant tout comme des accompagnatrices qui sont soutenantes, qui donnent des conseils. Et l'accueil semble être vraiment un moment clé de la prise en charge. Dr Mukwege rappelait hier que c'est au moment de cet accueil par les mamans chéries que la SVS est amenée à raconter, déjà à partager son intimité, à raconter l'histoire et les faits. Ça se passe au moment de l'accueil et on essaye de ne pas le répéter dans la suite de la prise en charge pour éviter les traumatismes à rebours, quoi. Du point de vue un peu plus qualitatif, on retiendra simplement ici par rapport à ça qu'il y a une forte demande des SVS d'avoir un contact avec leur maman chérie après l'hospitalisation, enfin de garder ce lien, de garder ce contact après leur séjour à Panzi. Spontanément, les mamans chéries, de leur côté, se présentent donc comme des accompagnatrices, comme des référentes qui apportent un soutien et des conseils. Et les tâches administratives, les tâches d'un autre ordre que les soins et la relation ont tendance à être assez occultées, ou en tout cas, elles ne sont pas évoquées spontanément. On arrive au même constat donc en présentant les données d'une manière un petit peu différente. Donc l'accueil, l'accompagnement, le soutien sont au premier plan, tandis que les tâches administratives sont reléguées à l'arrière, alors que ça occupe une grande place de leur travail au quotidien. Voilà, on ne pouvait pas manquer d'interroger les mamans chéries sur leur satisfaction au travail, sous la forme d'une question tout à fait ouverte. Et globalement, on se rend compte qu'elles sont assez contentes, fières de ce qu'elles font, surtout lorsque les patientes leur témoignent la reconnaissance, d'autres intervenants l'ont évoqué tout à l'heure. Et maman Esther l'a dit aussi beaucoup mieux que moi. Ce qui est assez remarquable, c'est que, à contrario, la première cause de frustration, ce ne sont pas les conditions salariales ou les conditions de travail qui ne sont pas mirobolantes, qui ne sont pas extraordinaires, contrairement à ce qu'on aurait pu attendre, enfin qu'elles évoquent ça en premier lieu, mais ce qui les frustre davantage, c'est leur sentiment d'impuissance, de ne pas avoir pu aider suffisamment les patientes en difficulté. Et je trouve que ça en dit assez long sur leur conscience professionnelle et sur leur capacité d'empathie. Quand on croise donc le regard que les mamans chéries portent sur elles-mêmes avec le regard des SVS, donc on a la confirmation que cette dimension de relation interpersonnelle, de soutien, de suivi, est jugée extrêmement positive, quoi, et vraiment ce qui est le nœud, le cœur de leur travail, quoi. Et bon, ce n'est pas étonnant dans une approche holistique qui se veut centrée sur le patient, mais ça nous encourage, je dirais, au niveau du service, à mener à bien une espèce de réorganisation du travail que nous avons entrepris depuis quelques semaines. Donc une réorganisation qui va dans le sens de plus d'interdisciplinarité et aussi dans le sens vraiment de prendre soin d'eux, plutôt que de donner des soins, plutôt que de poser des actes techniques. On essaye vraiment d'insuffler une nouvelle approche, une approche vraiment plus orientée patient, où on prend soin d'eux. Et je pense que ça mériterait, dans des recherches ultérieures plus approfondies que celle-ci, de s'intéresser à cette relation qui fait du bien, à cette relation qui soigne, voilà, qu'on fait, qui est évoquée ici, quoi, dont on souligne son importance, mais sans vraiment creuser. Voilà, peut-être pour terminer là-dessus, voilà, pour poser quelques questions, pour ouvrir un petit peu maintenant le champ. Donc on peut s'interroger sur le rôle des mamans chéries à l'avenir et dans d'autres lieux. Vous savez peut-être que la Fondation Panzi est occupée à créer des one-stop centers ailleurs qu'à Bukavu. et notamment en milieu rural. Est-ce que le rôle des mamans chéries sera le même dans ces one-stop centers en milieu rural? Peut-être qu'elles interviendront au niveau de l'identification des patientes à la base, ce qui est plutôt une tâche actuellement qui est confiée à des partenaires, à notre réseau de partenaires de l'hôpital. Et puis, on peut aussi se poser la question il y a une autre tendance à la Fondation Panzi qui est de rapprocher les soins des patientes, pas nécessairement en créant le One Stop Center avec le package d'activités holistiques, mais en allant porter une partie des soins. En général, les soins médicaux et psychosociaux, on l'a vu ce matin, Dr Freddy est là, la clinique mobile, c'est déjà ce qu'elle fait. Quel est le rôle de ces mamans chéries? Quel pourrait être leur rôle dans ces soins, dans cette délocalisation des soins? On est dans une toute autre dynamique qu'une hospitalisation à Panzi. Là, on est plus dans les one-stop centers en milieu rural, dans une démarche plus ambulatoire, alors qu'à Panzi, les mamans sont logées dans une maison de transit à côté de l'hôpital, et lorsqu'on va porter les soins dans des lieux de crise, là, on est plus dans une démarche d'urgence. Il y a certainement un rôle que les mamans chéries, un rôle utile qu'elles pourraient jouer là-dedans, mais ça reste à créer et à construire, quoi. Voilà, pour terminer, je voudrais simplement situer, et très rapidement situer, l'action des mamans chéries dans un modèle d'intervention en santé mentale qui fait référence dans le secteur humanitaire, ce qu'on appelle les normes IASC. On peut situer aujourd'hui l'action du binôme assistant psychosocial et psychologue au niveau, vous voyez, au deuxième niveau, donc au niveau d'un dispositif de soutien ciblé mais non spécialisé. Panzi reste un hôpital général, ce n'est pas un centre de santé mentale, ce n'est pas un hôpital psychiatrique. Mais Panzi compte, je le signale en passant, un service de psychiatrie depuis à peu près 1 an, un service de psychiatrie où il n'y a pas d'accompagnatrice, où il n'y a pas de maman chérie. Je sais que le docteur Amani, qui fait une intervention dans une autre salle, aimerait beaucoup pouvoir compter sur ce soutien à ses côtés et aux côtés des patientes, quoi. Je signale aussi en passant, je relève vous voyez, le concept de commune sans viol. C'est un projet que nous menons, Médecins du Monde, qui est tout à fait complémentaire à l'action curative, je dirais, qui a lieu à Panzi. Donc c'est un projet qui se passe dans 3 communes de Bukavu. C'est un travail là tout à fait communautaire qui vise la prévention, la protection, mais qui assure aussi le suivi de patientes après leur hospitalisation à Panzi. Voilà, j'espère que cette petite étude pourra servir de base à des recherches ultérieures et peut-être même dans le cadre du projet ARES. Adélaïde n'est pas là, mais donc je pense que vous savez que l'ULG a décroché un financement qui permettra de mener des doctorats à Bukavu pour étudier vraiment de manière très scientifique les 4 piliers du modèle holistique. Peut-être que ça servira de base pour l'étude du 2e pilier. Et en tout cas, j'espère aussi que ça aura permis de mettre en valeur le travail très important des mamans chéries, qui sont vraiment des acteurs qui travaillent un peu à l'ombre des autres professionnels, quoi. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Nous allons maintenant passer à l'intervention de Madame Yagi.
Hi. Perfect. Hi, my name is Ines, and I'm a psychotherapist based in Ottawa, so I do individual, couple, and family therapy. And I'm a researcher, and as well as a doctorate. So today I'm going to be presenting my research thesis, which is titled Conflict-Related Sexual Violence Against Men in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Lifting the Veil of Secrecy over a Controversial and Taboo Subject. I think first it's important to mention that discussing sexual violence against men is not to undermine the atrocity that is actually happening to women and girls, victims of rape and other forms of sexual violence in Congo and elsewhere. When I started working on my master's, I decided to specialize on working with female victims of sexual trauma. And once I finished that, I went into private practice where I actually work with women and men. And from there, I decided personally, as a way of moving past like a narrow interest and gender stereotypes, it was important to start welcoming all victims on the table as we're talking about, as we move towards the quest towards peace and social justice. So this is my way of inviting all victims on the table by actually focusing my PhD on sexual violence committed against men, specifically in the Congo. And I decided to do it in the Congo because this is my way of giving back. Last year was the first time I went back to Congo after 20 years. And I decided that's how I was going to give back, by going back and contributing within my community. So I'm going to do a quick synopsis on the literature. The literature states that although both men and women can be victims of conflict-related sexual violence, men victimization experience is generally considered a taboo and controversial topic. And this is particularly true in the context of the war in the DRC, an area of research that has often been overlooked and neglected over the years. And as we already know, most research conducted on the subject matter tend to focus on sexual violence actually committed against women and girls. The best example is what happened yesterday, the opening ceremony, which I thought was memorable, beautiful, and I had a great time. And I think there were maybe 20 people that presented on the stadium. And out of the 20, only 3 people actually mentioned sexual violence committed against women and children, and included girls and boys. And in my biggest surprise, men were not even mentioned anywhere, even as just overpass, just to mention that yes, we also have male victims, but it wasn't mentioned anywhere. And it's not a surprise because this is what is actually happening. It reflects what is happening to men within the research and within conferences such as this one. And specifically in the Congo, for example, in the eastern region, humanitarian intervention in the eastern region, they tend to focus specifically on meeting the needs of women and girls. Gender-sensitive programs often are confused with women issues, and unfortunately, men are rarely included in awareness campaigns. And unfortunately, the issue surrounding conflict-related sexual violence continue to discuss the issue by primarily referring to men as perpetrators and women as powerless and helpless victims. And because I do research on this area, I listen to the languages that was used throughout the conferences, and you can see how it leans more towards men as perpetrators and women as victims. And furthermore, strictly defined gender roles and stereotypical descriptions of masculinity that is embraced in the DRC actually strengthen the taboo to preserve conventional gender roles. So based on the most recent research, and when I say most recent research, we're talking about 2018 and early 2019, the research states that the existence of male victims should not only be recognized, but the issue should be discussed in depth, including the different types of sexual violence that male are victims of, the effect of the victimization experience, and follow-up. I think I need to go back. How do I go back? So based on that, the current research seeks to fill in the gaps in the literature by investigating, one more in the front. Yes, thank you. By investigating war-related sexual violence against men and boys in the DRC as a means of first contributing to the literature on sexual and gender-based violence against men, and as a way of actually raising awareness about the issue. And based on the methodology, I did a phenomenological research that was conducted with the objective of understanding men's experiences of sexual victimization as they intersect with the value idea of masculinity or the traditional male code. And the objectives were the 2 objectives mentioned on the screen. The first one, to give male victims a platform to share their sexual victimization experience and to better understand male victims' needs. And secondly, to explore how, if at all, the traditional male code informs male sexual violence as it is experienced in the DRC. And some of my main concern, actually, as I was looking towards getting ethics approved for me to go back to Congo, the main concern was first around safety, because I've not been in Congo for 20 years until last summer. And the second concern were men even going to come forth to break the silence and the stigma and the isolation to come forth and want to share their experiences. And to my biggest concern, to my biggest surprise, I'm still working with a gentleman, a psychologist who worked as my research assistant. To my biggest surprise, it took less than 24 hours where we had close to 30 men that actually came forth wanting to share their experiences. Given that it is a PhD research, we cannot have 30 men. That's just too much amount of data to analyze in 4 years. So I ended up with 14 individuals. And out of the 14, 16% were interviews that were done when I was not there. And for me, it was important for me to be present and to connect with this individual. So the hospital, Suzame in Bukavu, were kind enough to invite me, and they gave me good space where I was able to participate in 40% of the interviews. And some of the results that came out of that, and I have maybe 8, 9 different themes and multiple meaning units and subunits. For the sake of time, I'm just gonna mention a few ones that kind of stood out for me. The first one was gratefulness. Participants used the word gratefulness or being grateful for the opportunity to tell their stories and to feel heard, among others. A few participants expressed gratefulness and thanks to the researcher for taking on a complicated subject matter, for caring enough to visit them, and for offering them a platform to actually share their experiences. Participant 1, within the first page, the first transcript, first page, participant 1, he stated, quote unquote, "This is the first thing that I've read." It says, "First, I am grateful to see you, because since we were victims, till now, no one has asked me how and what happened to you." And this individual was victimized July 14, 2009. 10 years later, actually 9 years later last year, when he actually had the opportunity to tell someone about what happened to him. Another participant stated, quote unquote, "I thank you for coming and talking with us. May God," this is the importance of spirituality as working with victims in the Congo, it says, "May God continue to mobilize you to see the result one day." And this really, it reinforces why I wanted to work, not only with women, but with men as well. The third emergent theme talks about the chronological description of events. It focuses specifically on ongoing impacts of events. And for the sake of time, we're gonna look into 2 of them, physical and psychological consequences. So the physical consequences and medical problems were just endless, including headaches, back pain, body ache, ongoing pain, weaknesses, loss of balance, loss of strength, bloody noses, sensitive stomach, loss of appetite, incontinence of urine, blood in urine, hemorrhoids, reduced strength for sexual activities, genital mutilation, and more. And some of the participants were actually, this really touched me, were actually willing to want to show their body, which of course we didn't go that far, but just as a living testimony of what actually happened to them. Out of the 14 participants, only 1 individual actually used the word rape to describe his experience. And after I did a follow-up interview 4 or 5 months later when I started the data collection, and all the participants actually admitted verbally that they were raped and sexually assaulted, when in fact at the beginning, only 1 individual admitted to being raped. He stated, quote unquote, "Till now, my body is in pain. After being raped, everything is destroyed." And the psychological consequences, there are a lot of symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, including but not limited to nightmares, flashbacks, and unwanted upsetting memories, difficulty sleeping, intrusive thoughts, memory loss, and the list just goes on and on and on. When it comes to treatment, I had 3 meaning units that actually came out of that. The first, 12 out of the 14, they mentioned having no accessible medical treatment. Nothing whatsoever. One of the individuals mentioned accessing medical treatment, and people didn't access medical treatment for multiple reasons. First, not even knowing where to access medical treatment, even not knowing the words to describe their own experiences, multiple reasons. Another gentleman mentioned how he accessed medical treatment only after the symptoms got worse. And then another gentleman mentioned accessing psychological treatment without really, he says they treated my mind as Suzame, without really specifying as to what actually happened or what kind of treatment plan he actually received. And all of the participants mentioned traditional doctors, such as elders, or treatment through hot water, and all of them mentioned ongoing symptoms. They're still dealing with the symptoms 5-10 years later after the assault. Emergent theme 5 talks about the suffering that is directly linked to war and the armed conflict in the Congo, such as the rape, the suffering that is as a consequences of the rape, such as a lack of support from community members, lack of support from family members, lack of support from wives. We have wives that actually left their husband after they were victimized. And suffering that is also linked to ongoing symptoms, and finally suffering as in like an existential kind of suffering. So far, those that work with women and men, you can see there's actually a lot of similarities in the dynamics as to what is happening to men and women. Emergent theme 6, which is the disclosure, to my biggest surprise, all 14 participants stated that it's not a secret. What happened to them, everybody in the community is actually aware of it, either because they were present during the victimization experience or they were rescued by community members and family members, or also because of the visible symptoms of what actually happened to them. As part of the discussion section, what stood up was the concept of secondary victimization. As emphasized on the literature on secondary victimization of male victims of sexual violence, it quickly became apparent to me that participants were suffering from secondary victimization experience linked to the shame, to the stigma, isolation, and supportive reactions such as dismissal, ignored, made to feel invisible, victim blaming, criticism, ongoing persisting symptoms, which prevents them from accomplishing their manly duty. And this is how kind of the male code intersects with male sexual victimization experience. It says that although participants came from different tribes, they share a similar definition of masculinity. In a traditional sense, a real man is strong, is virile, tough, sexually aggressive, a protector, provider, and procreator. 2 minutes, that throws me off. The literature talks about male in the eastern region of the Congo, in the eastern region of Africa. The concept of masculinity is built on 2 features. First, being male is considered healthy, it is innate, and is natural. The second, a man must stay masculine. Therefore, masculinity is so valued, so valorized, so prized, and is lost such a terrible thing. And all of these men mention actually losing their manhood, that they feel less than a man, and how they're not able to reclaim their status as men due to ongoing symptoms that prevents them from being procreators, protectors, and provider. I'm going to conclude with the concept of responsibility. I came across it in the literature not long ago, actually, and I find it quite interesting. The author, in the context of the article, the author states that the concept of responsibility demands that we, as authors, recognize our position of privilege, what we are, in writing about war from a place of safety. That's the first thing, that we're all coming from Western countries, or not, those are not, but we're writing from a place of privilege to tell their story. And secondly, the author also asks others similarly privileged to acknowledge their responsibility to theorize war rape with due attention to gender in order to avoid perpetuating a model of masculinity that has potentially harmful effect, as well as, this is me, I added this second part, as well as perpetuating a model of gender-based violence as being synonymous to the suffering of women and girls. So finally, even though in my private practice, in my private clinic, I have devoted a lot of time and energy towards joining with women and men victims of trauma from a place of empathy, compassion, and conditional positive regard, genuineness, and non-judgmental attitude. Additionally, from the place of privilege, as we're talking about privilege and responsibility, I have decided to join researchers and activists that are fighting for meaningful and a true gender-inclusive approach in a conceptualization of conflict-related sexual violence as a way of combating gender stereotypes and biases around sexual violence. And me going back to the Congo was my way of showing compassion. And the concept of compassion, it talks about suffering with the other, noticing what the other is going through, put yourself in a person's position on their shoe, having the desire to want to suffer with them, and then to find the solution as to how to alleviate that suffering. So thank you so much for having me today.
Alors c'est déjà presque la fin de cette journée. Nous allons entendre notre dernière intervenante, Madame Gaffarkan.
So thank you all for sticking around. I know it's been a very long day. So maybe you're very welcome to move your body a bit if you feel like it, just to give your body what it needs in this moment to engage for one last presentation. So thank you for bearing with me. I do appreciate it. So yes, I thank the organizers for the opportunity to tell you something about narrative exposure therapy, which is a therapy form I'm very enthusiastic about, so I'm happy to share some details on it today with you. So I was lucky because Linda was in the plenary session and she explained a lot about the work of ARC National Psychotrauma Center and her clinical team, and I'm part of her clinical team, and she also was kind enough to mention me and the PhD research I'm doing with the clinical team. So my name is Rina Gaffarkan. I'm a psychologist and I'm a researcher, and I have a background in humanitarian aid, where I actually worked for the people who developed narrative exposure therapy. I worked with them in Uganda, where I worked with former child soldiers and victims of gender-based violence. And we're represented here with a few team members. Linda and Pim, you met in the plenary session, and Jitske is a clinical psychologist who's also here and linked to our team, just acknowledging them for a moment. So before I go into the details of what narrative exposure therapy entails, I want to share a little bit on traumatic memories, just to give you a bit of a theoretical background. And again, I was lucky because a lot on that was explained in the plenary session as well, about how traumatic memories are stored in the brain and how this actually leads to problems later on. But I will just add on to that a little bit. So just very roughly, there are two parts of memory in general, not only for traumatic memory. So there is a cold part, let's say, and a hot part. So the cold part of the memory deals with the factual elements of the memory and the context, so the where, when, all of that. And then the hot part of the memory is more on the cognition, so what you were thinking about it at that moment, how you were feeling, so more the emotional part, how your body was doing, was your heart beating fast, were you sweating, all of those elements, the bodily experience. And then there's this whole range of sensory information, so what you saw, what you heard, what you smelled, touch. So roughly, as we saw in the plenary, it's a very complex thing, of course, the brain, but roughly we can say that the hot part is stored in the amygdala in the brain, and then the cold part is stored in the hippocampus in the brain. I will get back to that. So that's in general. But now let's look at what happens during a traumatic event like sexual violence. So when you're in a situation of fear, so extreme fear in the case of trauma, in a traumatic experience, a lot of stuff is happening in the body. We can all imagine that, and we are all aware of that. But one of the things that happens, which is interesting for the talk today, is that actually as your stress levels rise, so for example, when giving a presentation, in a very functional way, the amygdala and the hippocampus are rising in functionality together. So you might experience more of the hot parts of the experience, so what you're saying, what you're feeling, but I'm also, my hippocampus is also working extra to say like, okay, I am in a academic setting and all of these things. So it's quite functional, but actually, I think that's, there it is. So when we're in a traumatic situation, when we're in a high fear situation, you actually see that the functioning of the hippocampus, so the cold part of the memory, is functioning less, but the amygdala is actually staying high in functioning. So what does that mean? It means that, so here we see it again, it means that the cold memory, so the hippocampus, is functioning less, so the context and all the factual elements of the memory are stored in a less good way. So it's not processed properly, let's say. Whereas the hot part of the memory, the fear, most prominently the body posture, a certain smell, something you heard, is stored extra well. So it's overly actively stored, experienced and stored. So next up, I have an example of how that might look like for the case of a rape. So a lot of details here, but I will walk you through it. So at the bottom, you see the cold part of the memory. So you were working as a secretary, you were living in Berlin, it was short before Christmas, all of these elements which have to do with context. And then on the upper part, we see sensory, cognitive, emotional, and physiological part of the hot elements of the memory. So, for example, for sensory, it was a cold day, it was a dark street. I saw a man with there was a man with a beard. That has to do with feeling. Cognitive, as it was happening, you thought, I will die, I am helpless, there's no way out. And all of these emotions that were associated with the moment. And then also the physiological part. So as you can see, so the upper part of the memory are stored in a very good way or in an over-representative way. So that means whenever you see a man with a beard, you might also get that same cognition of I will die, and then the fear will come with it. So that's an example of a trigger later on in life. And that trigger then, or seeing the man with the beard and the feelings associated with it, are then not linked to the context. They're not linked to that day when you were living in Berlin and it was shortly before Christmas. So that's where a lot of actually problems that people face later on come from. At least that's one explanation of it. So that is stated here a bit. So because the context is separated from the emotional experience, people have difficulty staying in the here and now, as I just explained. So they go back into the memory. They have difficulty distinguishing between traumatic memories because they're not placed in the context. So it's all one, big event. And because of that, the fear also generalizes, and people, of course, avoid the elements that are related to the traumatic memory. So now to go into narrative exposure therapy. Who here has been trained in narrative exposure therapy? Okay, good. Good. Ah, you too. Okay. That's good. So just quickly, it's what it is. It's a short-term treatment for mainly post-traumatic stress disorder. It has been developed in a humanitarian setting. It started in Uganda with the Rwandan refugees, but it has been tested in many different humanitarian settings since then. It's especially for multiple and complex trauma, so people who have experienced several types or several occasions of a traumatic experience. What it does, it contextualizes traumatic events. Like I said, it's evidence-based, I will get to that. And the nice part about it is that the process of narrative exposure therapy results in a life story, which can be used as a testimony and has that element of social sharing. There's a child version and an adult version. The child version is called KidNet. So now I take this one. works. Yeah. So I brought the materials here today because it's just so nice to show it, how we do it with the patients. So there are 3 types of materials that we use. So there is a rope, which is here, and this represents somebody's life. So here we explain to the person that we work with, we explain like, this is the day you were born, this is the beginning of your life, this is childhood, this is your adolescent period, this is adulthood, and this little part here is the future. We don't know yet what is to come. And then we have stones and we have flowers. So the stones, they represent the traumatic events in somebody's life, or the bad significant events in somebody's life. And the flowers, they represent the positive experiences in somebody's life. So people, or like positive memories. And so during the first session, what you do is you lay out your life story by using the stones and the flowers. So for example, for your birth, you pick a stone and you place it at the beginning of the lifeline, and so forth and so forth. So at the end, I have an example here of one of, it's not an actual patient, but it could have been our patient. It's like a general example of, sorry, can you see? Yeah, okay. So, for example, at the end, the lifeline might look like this. So, born, having a happy childhood, my mother died. Actually, the population that we work with, victims of sexual exploitation and conflict-related violence, you often see people who are orphans or have lost either their father or their mother, which is an important moment of change for the worse in their lives. My aunt took care of us, that was a flower. I got a new school uniform. And then usually from an early age we see people experience their first experience with sexual violence. So in this case, this person was raped by her uncle. Well, a flower for a friend, a general stone for like poverty, just like having hardship in daily life, and stop going to school because of poverty. Then having a nice job in a restaurant, and then actually one big stone for being trafficked to the Netherlands and then being sexually exploited. So that's how a lifeline might look like. And then in the following sessions, what you do is you discuss each flower and each stone. So for the flowers, we focus on, reliving also that positive moments in somebody's life, and being able to feel happiness again and remember that there were happy times, because usually people who come to us have lost that connection to also the happy parts in their life. They see the suffering and they don't see hope for the future. So by actually talking about the flowers, it's a very important element of the treatment for people also to remember that there was a time where you could feel happy, and maybe it's possible to feel that again now or in the future. But then for the stones, what we do is we ask about that hot part of the memory. So we ask about all those elements that I mentioned, the thinking, the bodily sensations, the emotions, and then we link that to the context. So we link it to the story. And I think as the common threads, in the common threads talk, it was also mentioned that people don't have the language. And narrative exposure therapy is very much about finding that language together. And that's why it's a kind of directive way of doing treatment. So you're all the time asking a lot of questions to also help people to start talking about what happened and actually together find that narrative, which is so important for understanding and healing what, thank you, and healing from the experience. So some of the questions are listed here. And then when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and just like the immense fear that is associated with the memory, sorry, this slide is in Dutch, to add another language to our, but I will translate. So here on the vertical line you see the amount of fear, and then on the horizontal line you see time. And then the blue line depicts the expectation of the patients when discussing stone. So people expect that, you know, if they start talking about it, they will just die of fear, of that it will be impossible to talk about it, because people expect it will be like, exactly like the moment is what it was happening, the rape. But then actually, because of then doing exposure, so actually going into facing the fear, talking about the fear of that memory, the red line comes into place. And then what actually happens is that after you get to the most frightful part of the story, afterwards the fear decreases and there is some relief. And sometimes that takes a few sessions. It's not like one-time success, but that's the working mechanism behind it. And yeah, like the research tells us, it does work like that. So as I mentioned, so after each session of discussing the flower and the stone, we write down everything person has told us. And then in the week after, we read back the story. So this is another way of reprocessing the memory and coming towards a narrative for somebody's life story. So as a result, at the end of the treatment, a person has a story, a life story of all the flowers and stones that have been discussed and laid out. And then this story the person can take with them and do as they like. Some people want to share it with their children, or at least parts of it, or others want to make a book out of it. Others want to show their lawyers, because like this is what I've been unable to share with authorities. And there's this testimony element to it, so it's also like your story being heard. So, like I mentioned, there's been numerous studies, randomized controlled trials, and also qualitative studies into narrative exposure therapy. And also in the plenary, it was mentioned that it is an effective treatment for reducing PTSD, and it's actually for refugee populations the preferred treatment for treating PTSD. So here are some references, but I'm happy to send you more references if you're interested. And here I've listed like the original material. So on the right-hand side, that is, on the right-hand side, that is the original manual developed by the people of Vivo. Names are up here. And then from our side at ARC National Psychotrauma Center, we have published a book, a Dutch manual on narrative exposure therapy. So thank you for your time, and we're happy to hear your questions.
Alors, nous sommes un peu en retard, donc le temps nous manque pour des questions. Je vous proposerai peut-être d'essayer d'en poser peut-être juste une ou deux. Peut-être les orateurs peuvent me rejoindre pour répondre. Oui, là-bas. Please come.
Sorry, so if you could just explain just briefly why this approach is more effective for refugee population as opposed to other methods. Thank you.
So, if you want, I can send you. Yeah, if you want, I can. It's from a meta-analysis for refugee populations, both in general and in Western higher income countries. And there it was shown that for refugee populations it's like the most effective in reduction of PTSD, but then like from a more conceptual point of view, well, first of all, I think it's one of the few trauma-focused treatment that was developed specifically for, not refugee populations per se, but like say displaced populations. And it was developed in a way to be, at least try to be culturally sensitive. I know that's a huge word to use, but at least there was some thought process into that. So the idea was that the narrative part of it is sort of transcultural in a way that like everybody has a way of maybe sharing stories, you know, like maybe not traumatic stories, but in general, most countries or cultures have this concept of storytelling, and so that element was put into narrative exposure therapy. Thank you.
Est-ce qu'il y a une dernière question? Oui.
Alors moi j'aurais une question pour vous, monsieur, de médecin du monde. Le travail remarquable des mamans chéries fait qu'elles sont indispensables à toute cette procédure de prise en charge et au fait que les survivantes, enfin que les victimes deviennent survivantes et qu'elles s'en sortent, etc. Et je me demandais, qui prend soin d'elles? Ou est-ce qu'elles ont besoin de quelqu'un qui prenne soin d'elles? Enfin, pas besoin, mais je veux dire, est-ce qu'il y a est-ce qu'elles ont des séances de groupe entre elles qui leur permettraient de pouvoir discuter et peut-être un peu avoir cette opportunité de digérer toutes les informations qu'elles imprègnent en fait? C'est assez, je dis que c'est quand même assez lourd et assez intense comme position qu'elles ont en tant qu'accompagnatrices.
Oui, vous avez tout à fait raison. C'est marrant parce que justement à la pause, j'en parlais avec je ne sais plus qui comme intervenant, mais effectivement, on n'a pas vraiment un dispositif qui est en place pour venir soutenir le personnel, et pas seulement les mamans chéries, hein, les psychologues aussi en caisse, les médecins également, quoi. Donc il n'y a pas vraiment un dispositif pérenne qui est mis en place, quoi. Donc je dirais qu'elles se soutiennent entre elles, bon ça c'est le minimum, quoi. De temps en temps, on a des intervenants qui viennent de l'extérieur comme ça et qui, mais c'est souvent malheureusement des one-shots qui n'ont pas de suivi, mais qui essayent de mettre quelque chose en place. On travaille depuis quelques années avec une psychothérapeute belge qui s'appelle Michel Quintin, qui était là hier, qui a fondé l'école de relaxothérapie ici en Belgique, quoi, et qui pratique le yoga, la pleine conscience, la relaxation, et qui a formé 2-3 infirmiers à cela. Mais malheureusement, on a un peu perdu le fil, on n'a pas réussi à garder ça en place, quoi. Mais donc, bon, une fois ou deux par an, on fait des sorties un peu récréatives, entre guillemets, avec le personnel, mais c'est tout à fait insuffisant par rapport à ce qu'elles emmagasinent comme émotion. Et comme, donc, voilà, je dirais, la question reste entière. Ben, on va y travailler, j'espère, avec l'appui de partenaires, mais vraiment, l'objectif, c'est de mettre en place quelque chose de pérenne et pas un one-shot, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de personnes de bonne volonté qui arrivent à Panzi, qui proposent leurs services, etc. Mais voilà, ici, je pense qu'on doit viser vraiment quelque chose de durable, un dispositif durable. Voilà, au début, notre idée était de chercher des ressources locales, mais voilà, on n'a pas vraiment trouvé, quoi, et donc on doit se tourner peut-être vers l'extérieur ou faire preuve de créativité, mais la question est excellente en tout cas. Merci.
Just to add, maybe I can offer Antares Foundation again. We are specifically trying always to, in a systemic way, to install a management structure within the organizations that would be sustainable for them and not needing any outside help anymore. So.
Just to add on that, récemment, on a été faire une formation de formateurs des médecins, des APS et psychologues à Panzi pour en fait faire en sorte qu'il y ait un modèle qui est à l'interne pour gérer le stress et pour prendre soin l'un des autres. Et c'est un début, bien sûr, mais c'est exactement dont on parle PIM aussi. Je pense que c'est très essentiel.
Peut-être au-delà de la formation qui est très très utile, il faut que l'organisation du travail le permette, quoi. Parce qu'effectivement, on a des gens qui ont des compétences, notamment dans le staff psychosocial, quoi, mais il faut encore se donner le temps parce qu'on n'a pas la culture, je dirais, de prendre soin de soi. Et donc voilà, donc c'est un premier pas. Il faut aussi que l'organisation ménage des temps pour cela. Et voilà, quoi.
Alors je vous propose qu'on remercie encore une fois nos orateurs très chaleureusement.